Ladies and gentlemen, it is Sunday, 3 Eastern here, and I'm excited. I've got a good show for you guys here today. Part two, Deuce, of a show that we did 2 weeks ago. Got Jack from Never a True Word hanging out. I'm about to bring him in just a moment. Ted Bundy's final interview, hours before execution. We started that, and I would say, if you're coming in random, part one is a must. You're definitely going to want to check that out as well. But this is part two of that. And again, the analysis from Jack. But everyone coming in here, thank you all so much. If you could hit the like, that would help us out tremendously. Give it a share on the old X machine, on any socials you may be on, and any Discord servers you may be on. I'd really appreciate that. But all you fine folks, thank you very much. I do have a will that's in play also. I'll keep it on everything. And yeah, without further ado, let me get Jack in here. What's up, Jack?
Hey, how are you?
Good, man. How you doing?
Apart from like technical problems in the world just before we started, I'm cool, calm, and relaxed.
Dude, and Jack's camera messed up right before we went live here, and I was like, "That's anytime I have any kind of technical issues, it's going to be right before I go live."
Yeah, I was recording a video an hour ago. Everything was all fine. Everything was seamless, and now for some reason it's all gone boomph.
Dude, that's how it happens, man. Well, I'm glad that you had a backup. Anyways, are you on your phone?
yeah. No, I'm using camera B.
Oh, okay. It doesn't look bad though. It looks good, honestly. So
thank you. The only problem is like you're over there, so I can either look in the camera or look at you over there. A professional could handle this, but I'm not a professional.
Hey, you know what? The most important thing is the audio, and it sounds crisp. You sound really good. So
good. Well, fingers crossed that holds out.
Yes, and yeah, like I said, everyone in here right now, thank y'all so much. Now, Jack, you have a video premiering after this, right?
Yeah, it's the case of Crystal Rogers. That is currently the case is on trial at the moment, but I've gone right back. Crystal went missing 2015, so actually 10 years ago this weekend, she went missing, and her boyfriend at the time was interviewed by the police, and I broke down about the first half of his interview last week, and holy moly, he has a lot of questions to answer, and he's one of the guys on trial in connection with her murder now, even though she's never been found. So we're going to look deeper into his police interview coming up in 54 minutes.
Nice. Yeah, we're going to try to time this perfectly to go right into Jack's premiere. So I like how this plays out, actually. This works out good. Anytime me and Jack have been working together, about 3 Eastern my time, he's about 5 hours ahead of me in England, and it's been working out pretty well. So without further ado, we're about to dive right back in. We're about halfway through the Ted Bundy final interview from 1989, hours before his execution. And yeah, let's dive in here. First of all, I've got to do this. Let me get it over here. Boom. And yeah, just let me know, Jack, whenever you need me to pause her up.
I don't want to over dramatize it, but to have been possessed by something so awful and so alien, and then the next morning wake up from it, remember what happened, and realize that basically, I mean, in the eyes of the law, certainly in the eyes of God, you're responsible. To wake up in the morning and realize what I had done, and with a clear mind and all my essential moral and ethical feelings intact at that moment, absolutely horrified that I was capable of doing something like that.
Let's stop there.
Known that before.
I mean, this guy just drops two of my favorite classic bombs there. I always say, someone using the word just, always dig in for deception. Someone using the word absolutely, dig in for deception too. And he says, I was just absolutely horrified that I was capable of doing that. Just as a minimizer, it's like, just focus on this little thing that I'm going to tell you. Don't pay attention to anything else that could be existing. I'm just going to want you to focus on the thing I talk about just here. So just absolutely horrified, and absolutely, again, is a deceptive word. Doesn't mean someone's lying when they say absolutely, but they're either using that to, or really they're using it to persuade you of something. The word absolutely never needs to be said. I was absolutely scared. It means the same thing as I was scared. I was absolutely honest. It means the same thing as I was honest. So they're adding that in there to persuade you of their point of view or what it is that they're saying. So I was just absolutely horrified, says to me here, this guy, there was a lot more going on with him, but he doesn't want to tell us that. He just wants us to focus in on the horrified thing. And, you know, I'm not in this guy's head, but I imagine there's part of him that was thrilled by what he did, as we've seen. You know, you don't do it again if it didn't give you some sort of pleasure. But also, he may well have been horrified about, you know, the actual situation he got in, because he's not silly, he's not daft. So, yeah, just two of those words, I was just absolutely horrified. And he keeps playing it here because he says, to wake up in the morning and realize what I had done. Not I killed someone or I had attacked someone or assaulted someone or whatever the first thing he did that he's talking about there, but just what I had done. So he's downplaying it in his language. And again, at the end there, he says, I'm absolutely horrified that I was capable of doing something like that. Again, it's very loose and just
separating himself from it.
Like that, you know.
Doesn't really want to talk about what really happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I should have got a better camera or something like that. You know, like that's where something like that comes into play. When you're talking about some of the things he did, using something like that is really downplaying the severity of what he did.
Erica in the chat, anyone else end up modifying their vocabulary after watching Jack's
video? Yeah, do not say Justin absolutely around me, although Ted Bundy does begin the answer to the next question with the words just and absolutely, so he hasn't learned.
And then Brooklyn, what year approximately was this recorded? This is in 1989 and literally just hours before he was executed by the state of Florida. So
there is just absolutely no way to describe.
There is just absolutely. I don't think I've honestly ever said that. In that, I've never used absolutely as at the beginning. I don't know. Like I'll say absolutely, but it's that is a strange way to say it.
We'll do it all the time. We will use that word. It is a word that we use. But I always say not all deception is malicious. You know, you may be wanting to persuade someone of your point of view, you know, because you're having an argument or a debate, and therefore you might use absolutely to make your point stronger. You know, I absolutely oppose this, or I absolutely think this is a great idea. You're using it to persuade. Well, hey, Ted Bundy is a master manipulator. So why is he using that word absolutely? It's manipulation that he's using it for.
Yeah.
First,
Jill.
The brutal urge to do that kind of thing. And then what happens is once it has been more or less satisfied and recedes, you might say, or spent, that sense, that kind of energy level recedes. And basically I became myself again. And I want people to understand this too, and I'm not saying this gratuitously because it's important people understand this, that basically I was a normal person. I wasn't some guy hanging out at bars or a bum, or I wasn't a pervert in the sense that, you know, people look at somebody and say, I know there's something wrong with him, and just tell. I mean, I was essentially a normal person. I had good friends.
This is a concept that he uses a lot in the second part of the interview. I'm just a normal person. I'm just the normal person. I'm just like all these guys in bars. I could be your son or your husband or anything like that. I'm just a normal person. He isn't. You know, we know he isn't.
Far from it, right?
But he wants to cross this fact that he's just a normal person. I think part of that is potentially he's deluding himself that he's a normal person. And he may well feel, and there's some inklings that come through in that most men feel the same way as me, or most men act the same way as me, or I was the person that acted on it, but we all feel the same. But some of his words belie that. So he says, I wasn't a pervert in the sense that, you know, people look and say there's something wrong with them, but that's not saying I'm not a pervert. That's just saying I wasn't a pervert in this sense. It's a very qualified way of not being a pervert, but he is open to the idea that he is a pervert. And then he says, I mean, I was essentially a normal person. Well, you're either a normal person or you're not a normal person. You can't be essentially a normal person. So I think he knows that he is different. He is an outlier, but it's very important for him to just think and get across that, hey, I'm just a normal person.
That could almost be alluding, at least maybe in real time, in his own brain with his childhood and the deal with his sister / mom / grandma situation. Because I mean, you know, But from looking on the outside, I'm a normal person, but really and truly, it's not a normal way for that to happen at all. And
Yeah, it's almost, I feel like he's hiding in the crowd, or he wants to hide in the crowd. You know, he just wants to be this normal person, because all of this, for all that he appears to be open and kind of going, I'm going to let you inside the mind of Ted Bundy, the serial killer. In all of this, he excuses away his behavior. It wasn't him that did it. It was the pornography. And I'm just a normal person. If I hadn't been exposed to the pornography, then, you know, to all intents and purposes, would just be like the guy down the street.
right.
I led a normal life, except for this one small but very potent and very destructive segment of it that I kept very secret and very close to myself and didn't let anybody know about it. And part of the shock and horror for my dear friends and family years ago when I was first arrested was that there was no clue. They looked at me and they looked at the All-American Boy, and I mean, I wasn't perfect, but I want to be quite candid with you. I was okay. I was. And the basic humanity and basic spirit that God gave me was intact, but unfortunately became overwhelmed at times. And I think people need to recognize that it's not some kind of those of us who have been so much influenced by violence in the media, in particular pornographic violence, are not some kinds of inherent monsters. We are your sons, and we.
So you're much more of an expert on Ted Bundy than me. Was he a loner? Did he have lots of friends, or did he feel a bit of an outcast in life? Do you know?
I think he felt like an outcast, but he did actually do well with people. Like he always had a girlfriend, at least after he graduated and he got into college. He did have friends, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, he felt like he didn't fit in, even while hanging out with people.
That's exactly what I pick up in the words throughout all of that, is this desire to fit in with crowds. So very much like I'm a normal guy. So, what did he call himself? The All-American Boy, right? We fit in more than the All-American Boy. But also he's talking about people need to recognize that those of us who have been influenced by violence in the media are not some kind of inherent monsters. And again, this suggests to me that he wants to belong to some sort of social group, because he could talk for himself there and just say, I was influenced by violence in the media. I'm not some kind of inherent monster. But I get the impression he wants to join in with groups. He wants to feel like part of something, in his words. Therefore, if he did feel a little bit cast and rejected by society, that might explain. I mean, lots of us feel slightly outcast into mainstream society, want to do what Ted Bundy did, but it might at least explain some of his thought process or rationalization for why he did that.
Interesting. Yeah. Bundy is interesting because he did get by all intents and purposes, he got along with folks. He always had friends. I'm going through the book The Stranger Beside Me, and just for reference, the lady that wrote this book, Anne Rule, was really good friends with Ted Bundy all the way through him even being known as a murderer. She continued that friendship and still wrote letters to him. But yeah, they befriended each other in 1972, and they both worked for a crisis call center, and they worked late night shifts together. Again, always had a girlfriend. I actually would have multiple girlfriends at the same time. He would lie to one and have another girl out of town, that type of thing. But yeah, the one thing that is that really comes through in his writings that I've seen, and even in his interviews, and Anne Rule, the way she kind of talks about him, is that he isn't even comfortable in his own skin. Like, he wants to fit in so bad that one of the first ladies that he wanted to marry, and he was really trying to impress her with law school, he didn't really feel like he fit in with her family because she came from a well-off family.
Right.
And he's like, I just don't fit in with this. But he thought maybe if I can get into law school and I can become this type of person, she will accept me.
He speaks about compartmentalization. Not easy to say. He speaks about compartmentalization later on in the interview. Just earlier in the section we saw before this, he said, I lived a normal life except for this one small but very potent and destructive segment of it that I kept very secret. So I think very easy for him to compartmentalize things, like you spoke about a girlfriend in one town, someone else in another,
Yeah.
and also this serial killer part of his life that he didn't let leak out in other ways.
And one thing else that just kind of flashed in my head. So while he is actively killing, after he'll do one of these murders, he will call Anne, or he'll call Meg, at the time his girlfriend. That's not her real name, but that's how she's depicted in the book. But we'll call his significant other, and he'll be super hyped up and super excited. And now looking back, they know the dates and the time frames and these evenings, 12, 1 in the morning, that he would call super excited, and he's off of this rush after he's just murdered someone.
Very much like the Ben Koberger selfie.
Yes, actually, yeah. Wanted to again. It is a connect, because he sent that to his mom, right? He's trying to connect, like,
yeah, dude, he's on a high.
That's fucked up. That's
your
crazy.
husbands. And we grew up in regular families, and pornography can reach out and snatch a kid out of any house today. He snatched me out of my home. It snatched me out of my home 20, 30 years ago. And as diligent as my parents were, and they were diligent in protecting their children, and as good a Christian home as we had, and we had a wonderful Christian home, there is no protection against the kinds of influences that are loose in the society that tolerates.
Stop there. This is a theme that we saw in part 1, just him going back to his childhood. And he talks there about, we are your sons and we grew up in regular families. Again, joining into things. So this is that, it's that line he used about being the All-American Boy. Well, the All-American Boy always came from the All-American Family, didn't they? So he's really obsessed with going back to childhood to lay the blame for this. And that could be entirely true for all I know about serial killers and upbringings. But he keeps going back and drawing on what happened to him as a child as the reasons for what happened, although he tries to mitigate it, and he says, as diligent as my parents were, and they were diligent in protecting their children, we had a good Christian home. So he wants to tell us how great his childhood was, but at the same time, every time he talks for any length of time about why he became who he is, he goes back to his childhood and mentions his family in the room.
And tries to make sure that you know that my mom and dad were good, right? It isn't their fault. He does try to make, he's trying to protect his family still.
Yeah.
You feel this really deeply, don't you? Ted, outside these walls right now, there are several hundred reporters that wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
And you asked me to come here from California because you had something you wanted to say. This hour that we have together is not just an interview with a man who's scheduled to die tomorrow morning. I'm here and you're here because of this message that you're talking about right here. You really feel that hardcore pornography and the doorway to it, softcore pornography, is doing untold damage to other people and causing other women to be abused and killed the way you did others.
Listen, I'm no social scientist, and I haven't done a survey. I mean, I don't pretend that I know what John Q. Citizen thinks about this. But I've lived in prison for a long time now. And I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me.
Got there.
And with
So, very long question, but did you see the fake humbleness there? I believe fake humbleness. Listen, I'm no social scientist and I haven't done a survey. I mean, I don't pretend to know what John Q. Citizen thinks about this, but so there's all this fake humbleness. And why I think it's fake humbleness is that it's followed by the word but. And I hear people say a but negates anything that came before it. I don't think that's the truth. A but, though, does indicate that everything coming after the but is a higher priority. I believe it more, or it's more important for me to say than everything that came before, which is why he's got, I ain't no social scientist, I haven't done a survey, but I'm going to tell you something that I believe is really important. And again, it's all about joining up with people. I've lived in prison for a long time now, and I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. So look, I think there's two things going there. His desire to be joined in with groups and to feel like he belongs to something, but also this, I'm not that unusual. I'm just like many other people. I mean, in this case, many other people that happen to be in prison. So there's not a great resume statement, but I think he really does want to say, hey, I'm just a normal guy. I'm just, John Q citizen. I'm the All-American Boy. There's nothing that special about me. But at the same time, I really want to belong to things. I want to find tribes that I can insert myself into.
Interesting.
Without exception, every one of them was deeply involved in pornography, without question, without exception, deeply influenced and consumed by an addiction to pornography. There's no question about it. The FBI's own study on serial homicide shows that the most common interest among serial killers is pornography.
That's true.
And it's real. It's true.
Ted, what would your life have been like without that influence?
I mean, there's a lot more people. The odds, the statistics have to be in the greater than the opposite, that there's more people that watch porn that don't kill.
Yes, and also the fact that, was it the pornography that made people serial killers, or is the fact they've got something inside them that makes them serial killers, does that attract them to pornography? You know, it's really, it falls apart. I'm no social scientist either, but I can, and just like you said there, I can find 2 or 3 counters to that argument that he's delivered as, that's true, it's real, and that's true. Why does he want to buy into that? Because it absolves him of blame. It's not his fault, it's the pornography's fault.
Yeah. He just cannot get away from the pornography in this interview.
You can only speculate.
Yeah. Well, I know it would have been.
Is he crying here? Is he?
I don't know.
I thought that a second ago, and then he's kind of sniffling. What is going on here? Is he that upset about the porn? Is this a show, you think? Do you think he's putting on a show, Joe?
I don't know. I'm not really a great acting coach or anything like that,
yeah.
so hard to tell for me.
Yeah, that's odd.
For me, and excuse me for being so self-centered here, it would have been a lot better for me and lots of other people. I know that lots of other innocent people, victims and families. It would have been a lot better. There's no question, but it would have been a fuller life. Certainly a life that would not have involved, I'm absolutely certain, would not have involved this kind of violence that I have committed.
Sure, Ted.
I thought what was really interesting in that part, and this is, so remember he was downplaying the severity of his crimes at some point, but he does talk here about the kind of violence that I have committed. Now, that's downplaying, I think, the full scope of what it is he did. But he does talk about violence, and he does put himself into it and saying, I have committed this violence. But do you notice how, forget the fake tears or the tears if they were real, do you notice how stuttery he was around there? I think this has got him really stressed talking about this. So he gets very stuttery. He repeats himself and so on. He does do an absolutely again, though. He says, I'm absolutely certain that my life would not involve this kind of violence. This is a perfect example of the fact he could say, I'm certain, and that would have the exact same meaning as I'm absolutely certain, but he really wants to convince us of this point. Hey, it's porn that's bad.
Yeah.
If I were able to ask you the questions that are being asked out there, one of the most important as you come down to perhaps your final hours, are you thinking about all those victims out there and their families who are so wounded, years later, their lives have not returned to normal. They will never return to normal.
Absolutely.
Are you carrying that load, that weight? Is the remorse there?
Again, I know that people will accuse me of being self-serving, but we're beyond that now. I mean, I'm just telling you how I feel. But through God's help, I have been able to come to the point where much too late, but better late than never, feel the hurt and the pain that I am responsible for. Yes, absolutely. In the past few days, myself and a number of investigators have been talking about unsolved cases, murders that I was involved in. And it's hard to talk about all these years later because it revives in me all those terrible feelings and those thoughts that I have.
Stop there. He starts that part, well, he starts it with an absolutely, which is, yeah,
He
gets perfect,
did.
Ted. Thank you. He says, again, I know people will accuse me of being self-serving, but we're beyond that now. He doesn't deny being self-serving. He just says, people will accuse me of it, but he doesn't deny being self-serving. And then the question is, the question alludes to, are you thinking about these victims? And he talks about himself. I think he's incapable of talking about the victims with any depth whatsoever. So he says, I have been able to come to the point in my life where I've much too late, but better late than never. I feel the hurt and pain I am responsible for. So he's talking about himself feeling the hurt and pain. He's not talking about that he understands the hurt and pain that he's caused in countless number of lives. He says, yes, absolutely. In the past few days, myself and a number of investigators have been talking about unsolved cases, murders that I was involved in. Good that he uses the word murders there. He's not downplaying this again. And it's hard to talk about all things all the years later because it revives in me all those terrible feelings and the thoughts that I have. So he was asked a question, the victims. And we hear, are you thinking about the victims? And all he says he's thinking about is himself. He wants to give us the impression that he's remorseful and regretful and trying to say, yeah, I'm in touch with the feelings and so on, but he's in touch with his own feelings, not the feelings of others. He's kind of numb in that answer to the victims, the feelings of the victims or the families of the victims as well.
And yeah, when the preacher was asking him that question, that, do you think about the victims and what you have done? He kind of looks off to the side there for a moment and, like, I don't know. It's almost like he's searching for the right answer. Like, you should know that. That should be, I mean, that should, I know he's a cold, calculated, one of the worst serial killers in the history of the world. But man, you can't even in this moment, in your last moments, it's like he's almost, extending an olive branch for you to show some human decency. And you can't even, like you said, he's like Erica said, he sees himself as a victim instead of being able to show any kind of compassion to actual victims.
I think, I always liked when, saying Ted Bundy was a bad guy with a bad childhood is no great shakes. I always like to leave people who watch something like this with things to think about in their lives, with something to take away. So take away the word absolutely from this, and I'll tell you why. The question is put to him, are you thinking about all those victims out there and the families? Now, that question, this is a yes-no question. You can say, yes, I am, or you can say, no, I'm not. Or I don't know would be also a fair answer to any yes-no question. What was his answer to that question? Are you thinking about all those victims out there and their families? His answer was absolutely. which
yeah,
is
dude.
Just it's not a
when you said that, I saw you look at the camera.
It was absolutely. And that is, again, that's the deceptive use of absolutely. He can't say, yes, I am. And you can tell that's a deceptive lie, that absolutely, because then he doesn't go on to talk about the victims. He goes on to talk about himself and his feelings.
Yeah, man.
Steadfastly and diligently dealt with, and I think successfully, with the love of God. And yet it's reopened that, and I felt the pain and I felt the horror again of all that. And I can only hope that those who I've harmed, those who I've caused so much grief, even if they don't believe my expression of sorrow and remorse, will believe what I'm saying now, that there is loose in their towns and their communities people like me today whose dangerous impulses are being fueled day in and day out by violence in the media in its various forms, particularly sexualized violence.
Stop there. Challenge for you now. He does mention here victims finally, but he does start off by saying, I felt the pain and I felt the horror. And I can only hope that those who I have harmed, those who I have caused so much grief, even if they don't believe my expression of sorrow and remorse, will believe what I'm saying now. Ted, what expression of sorrow and remorse? You haven't made an expression of sorrow and remorse here at all. You've told us how you feel and all the feelings that you've got, but you have not expressed sorrow and remorse for the victims here at all. If you did feel it, it would be the first thing that you mentioned, but you don't. And then you move to the self-serving thing again, which is that I'm not that bad because, hey, I'm very sorry, I'm very remorseful, but there's many more people like me and I'm just a normal guy. Many more people, dangerous impulses being fueled by pornography again out there. Downplaying. I'm just normal. I'm just like any other guy that's on the streets. They all want to do this. Do one, Ted.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, a little bit of fear mongering here. He's trying to get out into the world before he gets, executed out of the world.
Yeah. And what scares me, and let's come into the present now, because what I'm talking about happened 30 years ago. That is in my formative stages. And what scares and appalls me, Dr. Dobson, is when I see what's on cable TV, some of the movies, some of the violence in the movies that come into homes today was stuff that they wouldn't show in X-rated adult theaters 30 years ago. This stuff,
the slasher movies that you're talking about,
that stuff is, I'm telling you, from personal experience, the most, that is graphic violence on screen, particularly as it gets into the home to children who may be unattended or unaware that they may be a Ted Bundy who has that vulnerability to that predisposition to be influenced by that kind of behavior, by that kind of movie, that kind of violence.
I think that comment was MB there that said, what would Ted Bundy think now? That crossed my mind when I was going through this.
Yeah, we're in such a, oh my God, X alone, like social media, like we're in such a hyper, really sexual and violent age of, and he's talking about this in 1989, and the preacher mentioned slasher flicks. That made me chuckle.
Yeah, so he talks about a lot of things there, but what I want to zone in on is, and you can see that this was a question about victims, and he's just talking about himself and diverting away onto his favorite hobby horse subjects, very much like a politician who asked a sensitive question and very quickly diverts onto the thing that they want to talk about. He talks about all these violent things that are available for people to watch now, and he says, particularly as it gets into the home to children who may be unattended or unaware that they may be a Ted Bundy. Which child do you think he really means there? I think he's talking about himself. I think that there was almost an anger there in his words when he was talking. I think he feels like he was unattended when he was a child. That actually, if his parents had loved and supported him, then he wouldn't have been drawn to these things that he found that turned him into a serial killer. Again, putting the blame elsewhere, but I think that, again, this would make a lot of sense. Why does he want to feel part of something? Because as a child, he didn't feel part of the family. And that anger about unattended or unaware there, I think is, again, reflected anger back on his childhood. As much as he wants to tell us, my parents were great, the language he uses, the words he uses are not very convincing when he does it. I think that the unattended child is Ted Bundy.
Wow. That makes sense.
There are kids sitting out there switching the TV dial around and come upon these movies late at night, or I don't know when they're on, but they're on and any kid can watch them. It's scary when I think what would have happened to me if I had seen. That was scary enough. That I just ran into stuff outside the home, but to know that children are watching that kind of thing today, or can pick up their phone and dial away for it or send away for it.
Can you help me understand this desensitization process that took place? What was going on in your mind?
Well, by desensitization, I describe it in specific terms is that each time I'd harm someone, each time I'd kill someone, there'd be an enormous amount, especially at first, enormous amount of horror, guilt, remorse afterwards. But then that impulse to do it again would come back even stronger. Now, believe me, I didn't. The unique thing about how this worked, Dr. Dobson, is that I still felt in my regular life the full range of guilt and remorse about other things, regret, and
But you had this compartmentalized.
very well focused, very sharply focused area where it was like a black hole. It was like like a crack, and everything that fell into that crack just disappeared.
Stop there. He does say each time I kill one, and you see how hard it is for him to say it because the word kill.
Yeah, him actually saying that he killed somebody is hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Each time I kill someone. So he does take it on there. Finally. He mentioned the fact that he killed someone. And again, I think this is impression management. Now, what will happen with impression management is we want someone to, or an audience to believe something about us that's not true. And it's very hard to do convincingly if you study someone's words. Why? Because we don't have the authentic words inside our head or inside our brain to explain what it is that we feel or what it is that we've experienced. And therefore, we're a bit half-assed with our words. And that's what he does here, because he talks about the especially at first, the horror, guilt, the remorse afterwards. And then he says, the unique thing about how this worked is that I still felt in my regular life the full range of guilt and remorse about other things. So he's explicitly said what he wants to say here is I was just a normal person. I felt horrified at what I did and I still felt guilt and remorse, but he cannot help but say that it was guilt and remorse about other things, not about the killings, not about the attacks, or not about anything that he did to the victims. Guilt and remorse, other things, like pulling out in front of someone in your car, or
right.
like
something a normal person
accidentally opening a door in someone's face or something like that. He could feel guilt and remorse about that. But what he's explicitly saying there, he didn't have guilt and remorse about the killings. He had this horror, but not the guilt or remorse there at all.
And then interesting for him to say that, because he's one of the worst serial killers, because there's multiple occasions within his killings that he killed more than one person in one day. He literally, one of the craziest is he kept this one day in July of, I think, 74, Lake Sammamish in July, he kidnapped 2 different women this day and tried to kidnap multiple women from the same park on the same day. Like, how crazy is that? Like, it's not, that's insane. And then near the end, when he was in Florida, after he had escaped and gotten to Florida, he went into a sorority house and killed multiple girls in one go. So I mean, it's like he was taken over by a demon. You know what I mean? Like, he was actually, because I don't know if I'm probably wrong, because I'm not a serial killer expert by any means. I dabble in this and I know a lot about serial killers, but I don't know a lot of serial killers that killed more than one person in one day. That's crazy.
Just a little Easter egg for you. I was reading a book a couple of weeks ago about different languages used by different personality types. And one of the lines, I can't remember the personality type it was attributed to, but it said that one of the things they say a lot is, does that make sense? And as I was reading that, I said, oh, that's me. I'll speak to someone and explain something and I'll go, does that make sense? And it wasn't said in a really complimentary way, this personality type. It was kind of like, this is someone who wants to check in all the time to make sure they're still your friend, like they don't want to upset the apple cart and so on. So I was like, oh, I say, does that make sense a hell of a lot? I must pay attention to when I do that and when I use that. So imagine my horror when I was doing the analysis for that question and Ted Bundy finishes his answer with, does that make sense?
Yeah, God. Like, no.
It's just like me.
I think I did. Tiff calling me out here. Lake Sammamish. Yeah, I think I butchered the name of it, but you know what I was talking about.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. One of the final
thanks everyone for hanging out. Appreciate
murders that you committed, of course, was apparently Lil Kimberly Leachch, 12 years of age. I think
he's not going to want to talk about this one. 12 years old.
Wait for it.
Oh, dude, this is the bad one. Like,
the public outcry is greater there because an innocent child was taken from a playground. What did you feel after that? Were there the normal emotions 3 days later? Where were you, Ted?
I can't really talk about that right now. That's
too painful.
I would like to. I'd like to be able to convey to you what that experience is like, but I can't. I won't be able to talk about that.
Okay.
I can't begin to understand. Well, I can try, but I'm aware that I can't begin to understand the pain that the parents of these children that I have and these young women that I have harmed feel. And I can't restore really much to them, if anything.
You were right. He doesn't want to deal with that. And he says, for me, one of the most bizarre things in this entire interview, bearing in mind that he's going to be killed very, very shortly within hours. And he's asked about this murder of the 12-year-old girl. And he says, I can't really talk about that right now.
This is the last moment. This is your last interview.
Yeah. And he says, I'd like to be able to convey to you what that experience is like, but I can't. And that is, again, this thing that he's hiding from us, but get the sense there was a thrill around all of these things. And that was why he describes killing this as that experience, because it was an experience to him. He talks about how he can't understand. And then for the first time in this interview, he goes a little bit deeper into the feelings of other people affected. But if you'll notice, he doesn't talk about the victims once. He doesn't think how, and he must know how scared they were, how fearful they were, how they acted, things they said, and so on. You know, he must be very acutely aware of what was going on there. But he says, I can't begin to understand the pain that the parents of these children that I have and these young women I have harmed feel. So he's thinking about the relatives, the people close to the victims, but he's not expressing any empathy towards the victims at all. It's just really, again, compartmentalized, isn't it? He's got all these little parts of his life that he's very good at hiding and lining up. And he's not letting us into the victim compartment. He's letting us into the family of the victim compartment. Why is he doing that? He's talking about restoring things to them and so on. I think that is because they're alive and they can judge him. The dead victims can't judge him anymore. So he's no real interest in them, because this is about image management and impression management to him. And you can only do that on the living.
Wow, dude. Yeah, that's heavy as hell.
I won't pretend to, and I don't.
At one point there, and I'm no body language expert by any stretch of the imagination, but the point there when after he asked the question about the 12-year-old girl, he starts out with, I can't even get into it, but then he sort of looks up at him. He sort of looks back up to seeing how he's taken that.
Yeah, he's.
I thought that was very interesting.
The behavior panel call it the romancer.
Okay.
Which is someone who they'll look away, but they'll come back in and lock eyes because they're really interested in how what they're saying is going down with the person. Yeah, so that might be what he was doing.
That vibe was crazy because he's looking down while he's answering it, and then he acts like he's done and he's finished. He gives it a good 2, 3, 4 second pause, gives the look up, and I guess he can see that the guy's not satisfied and gives him a little bit more, right? Like, that's interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Even expect them to forgive me, and I'm not asking for it. That kind of forgiveness is of God, and if they have it, they have it. If they don't, well, maybe they'll find it someday.
Do you deserve the punishment the state has inflicted upon you?
That's a very good question, and I'll answer very, very honestly. I don't want to die. I'm not going to kid you. I'll kid you not. I deserve certainly the most extreme punishment society has, and I think society deserves to be protected from me and from others like me. That's for sure.
Stop there.
Uh,
Classic answer here. Do you deserve the punishment the state has inflicted on you? That's a very good question. He doesn't have an answer ready for this one. He's maybe squared off all his thoughts on what am I going to say about my upbringing or what's to blame for what I've done. But he hasn't squared this one off in his head. So when he says that's a very good question, his mouth is saying that, his brain is thinking, what is the right way to answer this question? It's buying time. And he says, I'll answer it very honestly. Well, why tell us you're being very honest? Just filtering for time here. I don't want to die. I'm not going to kid you. And I noticed this in the first part that we looked at. I don't want to die is very straightforward. It's, there's no words like absolutely in there or anything like that. So we can believe he doesn't want to die. And frankly, very few people would want to die. And then he said, I'm not going to kid you. And he said this a few times. He said, I won't pretend to do this, or I'm not going to kid you. Using a lot of metaphors for deception, really, or not telling the truth. So I think in his head, there is this real concept of, I don't have to be honest. Honesty is not something that is have to do, which is why when he is being honest, he sort of does flag it up, or he says, I'm not going to kid you. I won't pretend to do this or anything like that, because he's lived his life in very deceptive modes all the time. Something that's just almost inherent in him is, I don't have to tell the truth. I can't tell the truth. When I do tell the truth, I'm going to flag it up. Obviously, people don't feel the need to tell you they're telling the truth.
Dude, interesting, man. Yeah, I love these
I
breakdowns.
think what I hope will come of our discussion is, I think society deserves to be protected from itself, because as we've been talking, there are forces at loose in this country, particularly again this kind of violent pornography, where on the one hand, well-meaning, decent people will condemn behavior of a Ted Bundy while they're walking past a magazine rack full of the very kinds of things that send young kids down the road to be Ted Bundys. That's the irony. We're talking here not just about more. What I'm talking about is going beyond retribution, which is what people want with me, going beyond retribution and punishment, because there is no way in the world that killing me is going to restore those beautiful children to their parents and correct and soothe the pain. But I'll tell you, there are lots of other kids playing in streets around this country today who are going to be dead tomorrow and the next day and the next day and next month, because other young people are reading the kinds of things and seeing the kinds of things that are available in the media today.
Ted, as you would imagine, there's tremendous cynicism about you on the outside, and I suppose for good reason. I'm not sure that there's anything that you could say that people would believe. Some people would believe.
Yeah.
And yet, you told me last night, and I have heard this through our mutual friend John Tanner, that you have accepted the forgiveness of Jesus Christ and are a follower and a believer in him. Do you draw strength from that as you approach these final hours?
I do. I can't say that
it's going to be
being
easy.
in the valley of the shadow of death is something that I've become all that accustomed to, and that I'm strong and nothing's bothering me. Listen, it's no fun. It gets kind of lonely, and yet I have to remind myself that every one of us will go through this someday in one way or another, and countless millions who have walked this earth before us have. So this is just an experience which we all share.
Yeah.
Right on.
Wow.
And that's him. I don't think I need to do any analysis on that, because it's in his last answer, he uses all the themes. Not my fault. It was pornography's fault. There's so many more people like me, and other people will be like me. And just very interesting, when he thought of death, he says it's kind of lonely, which again is that wanting to belong, feeling like an outcast, feeling like he's got no one else around him.
Dude, yeah, and what Sheila said, extremely fascinating. Holy crap, dude. Yeah, man. Ted Bundy is I like looking at interviews like this of killers and people have done horrendous things to try to again tap a little bit deeper into their their heads, into their brains to see maybe where they sit and they stand. And one thing that's interesting about that is he's being interviewed by a preacher, and the preacher has his own reason for wanting to do this too. He's against pornography. He's against violence. He brought up the slasher movies. This is a big point of contention, especially in the 80s. Satanic Panic was huge, hyper focused during that point in time, and I feel like he's probably using Ted Bundy in this point to, hey, look, this is what can happen to your kids. You need to find the Lord Jesus Christ. I don't know how I'm not religious personally, but he is absolutely using Ted Bundy in this moment to further his
own agenda,
on this planet because of God. However you want to look at it, it's he's got his own,
Which what I find fascinating about it is that, and Ted would love me to hear me say this, but just the tactics that he uses, the way he uses words, the way he uses manipulation are around us all day, every day. And not just, I did say he's doing the classic politician thing there, and he did that a couple of times. That's a very good question. Let me think of the answer while I flatter you with how good the question was. And I'm not
he could have been a politician.
Yeah, I'm not equating politicians with serial killers, because we all do some of the things that he does there. Very much like the yes/no question thing that I spoke about. That all day, I'll do it tomorrow. I'm absolutely sure. Someone will talk to me tomorrow. A yes/no question, and instead of saying yes or no, I'll go, well, what you need to understand is, and it's. Hopefully I'm not doing it in a bad way, but I'm doing some subtle manipulation there, wanting to not answer the question directly because that doesn't favor me, but wanting to get my point and push my agenda forward. We all do it. I guess what's great about someone like Ted Bundy is we know he's a bad person, so we can equate these things to very deceptive tactics that are going on in someone's head.
Dude, super interesting, man. My question now, because we're in about 4 minutes, we're going to be heading over to Jack's channel, and he's got a premiere happening in just a moment. But my question right now is, what is the next video we're going to be doing? What is the next video? Because these have been so interesting and so fun.
Well, we've done Charles Manson, and we've done Ted Bundy. So who else is in that word? Kohlberger has, we've done Kohlberger, but sadly he's not done an interview.
Alien deal, so we could maybe go weird. Didn't we do a ghost one too, or am I crazy?
No, we didn't. We did the alien guy, which was fascinating. The guy who was supposedly under therapy.
That one was super. That one was really fun because it was him, like an old audio clip from the 60s.
Yeah, that was immense. Actually, someone called Erica suggested something to me today just before this. Erica said Leo Schofield from Gilbert King. No, it wasn't that one that Erica sent. This is why we shouldn't do these things live. I was listening to Bone Valley season 2 and learned that Jeremy Scott also had a grandma he grew up with thinking was his mother. He confessed to murder, but the state dismissed his claims. Would make a good analysis to check out. It's a wild case too.
Okay, all right.
I've never heard of it before, but I'm down for those things.
Okay. We're definitely gonna be doing something though. We'll figure something out and then get together and we'll hopefully it seems like a good time period. Sunday, 3 Eastern for me. I know he's 5 hours in the future in England. So
8 p.m. It's 9
p.m. coming up there.
8 p.m. here, yeah.
Everyone in the chat, thank you all so much. Again, the next time you will see me, I'm not going to be. I have a stream at 6 tonight on the second channel on my Wrestle Plunge channel. If you do feel like coming over there, that'd be sweet. If you're not following, please do so. Also have a video dropping over there at 4:45 today before the live. But other than that,
I'm not find time,
dude. I know, yeah. I just pick at it. I pick at it.
You're online all the time, and then we find out you've got a second channel where you're even more online,
dude. Yeah, like today I'll be streaming like 6 hours, like overall. Yeah, it's crazy.
Impressive.
I don't think I'm going to be live Tuesday and probably not Thursday this week because I'm actually going to be out of town. But this Friday, before we get out of here, Feral Friday is going to be special. I'm doing an all-night movie marathon. I'm trying to go from 9 p.m. Eastern to 7 a.m. I'm going deep, so it's going to be fun. I think this is like the 4th or 5th movie marathon we've done, but Brandy Churchwell is going to be the very first guest for the very first movie on YouTube. So 9 Eastern, Feral Friday. The next time you will probably see me, at least under the Publicly Buzzed moniker. But other than that, we're about to go to Jack's channel. And I like this portion too, because we get all these people gathered up in here. And we can jump straight over there to the premiere. Boom.
Come over. Come over. It's good. It's very good.
Like when you get over there, make sure you're already subbed up. And if you aren't going over there, or if you aren't subbed up by any reason, his links are down in the description. So, hey, Tiff, I'm excited to have Brandy on here. This will be her first time coming on the channel. And yeah, we'll see how she hangs out in a non-true crime sphere where we're going to be watching I don't even know what we're watching yet. I'm trying to figure out what we're watching. So, but without further ado, Jack, man, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, go over there right now, guys. Actually, can I do this? Oh no, it's a premiere. For premieres, I can't send them to a premiere. I can only do it to lives. That would be cool. But either way, go there now. Hit his channel. It's starting right now. Later, dude. Thank you.